Hello everybody and welcome to EDSC5040, Managing the Learning Environment. My name is Saul Karnofsky and I am your unit coordinator and your tutor. And this video is an introduction into this unit. I'm going to be talking through the unit outline. I'm going to be talking to the Blackboard site and what is involved in the learning there, particularly if you're a new student in this course and you haven't yet engaged in a university course fully online. Really important to watch this video and get an understanding of what you need to do to engage as a student and to do well and be successful in the assessments. I will be talking to the assessments as well, so you can certainly fast forward if you like, if that's the most important part of your introduction is understanding what you have to do for assessment. Please do watch that. I'll be talking a little bit in depth about that and ensuring that you get a really clear understanding of what's expected. On that, there will be as well further in-depth sessions on Blackboard Collaborate and possibly further videos in regards to the assessments and what is required for you to meet all the criteria on that, and talking about those elements of the unit will happen down the track. So by way of a short introduction to myself, I have been working in the university sector for a number of years now. Before that, I was a high school teacher. I graduated the University of Western Australia with honours and a graduate diploma in secondary education in 2004. My first year teaching was 2005. And I was teaching major in history, but social sciences more broadly. And I worked for a year in the school where I did my final prac placement, a school in the northern suburbs of Perth, in Hillary, St Stephen's Uniting Church School. I was teaching lower school there, and that was great. But after a year, if anything, teaching in the private system taught me that I wasn't suited to private school education. So I thought I'd spread my wings, so to speak, and move to London with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, and we lived in London for just shy of 2 years, and I taught in a number of settings in London, and the longest periods of time working there were actually in behaviour centres where students who have been excluded from mainstream schooling because their behavioural and emotional difficulties has excluded them from entering into mainstream education. So there'll be plenty of stories, no doubt, that I'll share in videos, and there are already some YouTube videos that I've recorded in regards to topics for this particular learning, on which some of the stories of my time there come out, and I will no doubt be referring to that time because I learned a great deal about working with students from very challenging home backgrounds and ensuring that in the centres in which I worked, in the education centres I worked, which was often one-on-one or one-on-two students, there was a lot of restorative justice, and there was a lot of relationship building. There was a lot of sort of care, sort of whole child care for those students. So if you want to know more about my time in London, feel free to ask me, post any questions you might have on the Facebook group. I'm more than happy to explain and explore my time there. After returning from London, I came back to Perth, and I got a job in a school called Southern River College, and that school is located in Gosnells. So if you're familiar with the area, you may be aware that it is quite a tough socioeconomic environment for the students there, and that was very challenging working at the college. I taught in years 10, 11 and 12, had some great success in the senior years in the history program there, and I taught history and brought students through year 11 and 12 history and some went on to university after doing quite well in the history course I was delivering. But after about 4 years there, I did attain my permanency, but I got very burnt out teaching in that environment, and did actually look to shift from Southern River College. I actually won a position at Kent Street Senior High School, but never ended up taking that position because through a sort of serendipitous series of events, I ended up getting a job at Curtin University, actually for their marketing department, working in student outreach. So my experience and my time working with low socioeconomic communities and students gave me the leg up to get into that program where we would go around and talk to students from a number of schools in Perth about coming to university and trying to encourage more students into university, which was wonderful. I had a great time doing that, but I missed the teaching. That wasn't ever really much about teaching. It was more about kind of spruiking the university and making it look like it was a fun place and a good place to go for those students. So I picked up a little bit of sessional work, teaching in the curriculum and instruction area for social sciences, and that experience and starting my PhD in education, Doctor of Philosophy in Education, got me sort of ingratiated into the School of Education. They saw that I had a lot to offer, and so I won a full-time contract as a lecturer there, despite still doing my PhD at the same time. And then that has led to a raft of different experiences teaching in the university sector, professional practice, working a lot in first-year programs, working in the graduate diploma program when that was still in, and then into the master's program. I've done lots and lots of face-to-face teaching. I've done lots of online delivery. I've done lots of writing of courses and units. In fact, the unit we're studying, I've had a hand in developing that, and also other units in the MTeach course in which you're now enrolled. I moved to Brisbane at the end of 2016. My wife got a position here for her work in the arts, and I got a chance to finally do my PhD full-time. So I stepped right back from full-time work and went into full-time studies on an APA merit scholarship, and had a wonderful time really diving into my data and writing up my data. And I have now successfully completed the first full draft of my thesis. That's off to my supervisors as we speak, and I'm awaiting feedback. My particular area of research, just briefly, is actually in teacher education. So I'm intensely interested in you and your experiences as a pre-service teacher, but my specific field of research is emotions and the emotional dimensions of learning to become a teacher. I've moved more into the education philosophy and sociology in that. So my understanding of emotions is not a psychodynamic one, or a behavioural one. Is very much around more to do with social rules, how culture and sort of inflects emotions, and how we, as teachers, how we know what's appropriate and not appropriate to express in teaching. Who tells us that? How do we come to learn these social rules? What is outlawed? What is considered a good emotion? What's considered a bad emotion as a teacher? So I've collected a lot of data from pre-service teachers in regards to these kinds of questions, and I've written them up and currently still refining that and developing that. It's in progress, and anyone who's done any kind of high degree by research knows that it's always evolving, always in progress. So that's me. I'm very much looking forward to delivering this unit. I have done this exact same unit last year, fully online through Open Universities Australia. So this is the first time I'll be delivering during a university term at the Bentley campus. I've got a small group with us. So you are one of around about there's less than 20 students. So I think that's a good thing. Hopefully there'll be lots of collaboration between all of us. So let's launch now into how we engage with this unit, and then that'll sort of get me talking as well through the unit outline a little bit. But ensure that you do very carefully go through the unit outline, especially again if you're a first-time student into the course and you haven't yet gotten into kind of, you're not enculturated yet, or maybe it's been a long time since you've been studying. Pick through that unit outline piece by piece, section by section, get a very clear understanding of it. And if you have any questions, please do email me. More than happy to clarify anything further, but it's very detailed, so you should have a clear understanding of what the unit's about. We're here to get a sense of what it means to be a manager of a learning environment. So managing everything to do with that learning environment, of which behavior, often when people think about classroom management, the first thing that pops into their mind is behavior. Now, behavior is central, of a central concern to the teacher who is working with a group of students, no matter what age they are, from year 7 through to year 12. But behavior is one subset of lots of other aspects that you as the teacher manage. And we'll go into that. But for example, space organization, resource organization, time organization, all of these things you manage. Yes, we spend a lot of time talking about behavior, and we will do so in this unit as well, because if you can't manage the student's behavior, oftentimes all the other stuff can't work. But it's really important to see these things as a kind of interlocked puzzle or network, that they all work together. If you're not managing one, there's something's going to fall, and your classroom won't work well, and you won't be able to develop, as is of central concern in this unit, a positive classroom learning environment where, generally, day by day, it's up and down, but generally, students arrive to your class, they understand what's expected of them, they know the rules, the classroom rules, they know they're there to learn, and you encourage that and you make that happen. And it doesn't just happen automatically. Sometimes even in the best schools, or where students are generally very well behaved, maybe they're often in Western Australia, you hear this term leafy green, meaning a school maybe like Rossmoyne Senior High School is a good example. School in a high socioeconomic area where students are generally very well behaved. But still, learning has to happen. You need to make that happen. So how do you do that? We're going to be talking about that. Again, think about, orientating yourself into what's expected in this unit, where your head needs to be at, that we are talking about current behavior management theory, strategy. Sometimes the theory, sometimes that goes back away. There's some theorists that wrote up their particular approach to classroom management many years ago, but there's been a lot of updating, and certainly the textbook, the McDonald textbook, really brings a lot of that theory into current relevance, and really what we're talking about here happens in schools, and schools expect you to know this stuff. Positive classroom management, discipline, building relationships, restorative justice and practices, all of those things is really important. Again, look at the unit learning outcomes here, what we're here to do, this is a master's unit, so we're expecting a high level of, in terms of the graduate attributes and the level of thinking that we require here. It's not just about simple comprehension. We're asking you to analyze, to research, to create plans and synthesize philosophy, theory, and strategies. Also expecting that you're going to get an understanding that to be a classroom manager, you need to engage with a number of stakeholders, whether they be the students themselves, most obviously, but then by extension, their parents and carers. And we'll talk about assessment too, and that explicitly gets you to think about that stakeholder, the parents and carers. Obviously communities, professional networks, and as well, that we've got to think about what are these roles, and critiquing it. How do we do these things better? This is what we're not just in this unit, not just expecting you to, neutrally, receive information and then transmit it back to me. That there needs to be a sense of analysis and critique in what you're doing, and those students who can manage that they're the ones that get the distinctions and the high distinctions, is that they're getting a really good sense of what is out there, what's my personal take on this, how is this working, is it working well? It's all well and good, for example, for a slick website to fly the banner of anti-bullying program, for example, but based on your research, based on your understanding, if you've spent any time in schools on professional practice, for example, what are you seeing? Is this actually working? Are anti-bullying programs doing what they're saying that they're doing, or is there something else going on? What do teachers think of it, etc., etc.? So this is this level of thinking that we are looking at in a master's program. It's not just about, as I say, a neutral kind of receive then transmit back. I'm not looking just for simple comprehension. It needs to be analysis here. And of course, the word in the unit outcomes, you see the word research. I'm looking for good research skills and as well expression of those research skills, academic expression in your writing, the marshalling of several academic voices, scholarly voices, in journal papers, in book chapters, for example, reputable websites and online materials, using all of that and bringing it into a cohesive whole, and then transmitting it and analysing it, then transmitting it in written form through clear academic expression in your writing, and that you work at it. You're not just rushing this thing through, and I'm sure you're not, because you're all master's students, so you're not just doing this a couple of days before. You're actually organised and you edit your work as much as possible. So, in the unit outline, it's rather brief, and I want to go into it a little bit here in terms of the learning activities, what's expected of you in this unit. So all different lecturers have different kinds of modes in which they wish to engage with their students. So this is my particular mode I've found has been successful in the previous fully online units. Number one, Blackboard site. You probably worked that out already, that is your repository of all the information that you need. It links to the reading list in the library to get all the materials. You'll have your hard copy textbook of McDonald, but there are a lot of online readings as well, and then that McDonald can be accessed fully online as well, which is what makes it such a great unit text. So Blackboard, obviously, in weeks, in the 10 topic weeks, it has all the activities, and they're generally self-paced. Now, you may like to do it in blocks depending on how you work. You may do weeks 1 to 3. You do that through. I've encouraged you to create your own learning journal, which might be on your computer, laptop, on your iPad. It may be a physical handwritten notepad as well. But basically, you're working through the activities and you're going along and you're doing them. You're not just skipping over and doing the ones that you like. The idea is we've designed the unit in a way with all the learning activities to build in the capacity for you to do really well in the assessment. So if you go through all of those learning activities, you're going to do well in the assessments. That's for sure. Engage with those activities. Do them with a depth of thinking, and as I say, encourage you to do lots of analysis of the materials you're reading or watching on YouTube and other videos and TV programs and things. So that then gets me to YouTube. So this video you're watching on my YouTube channel on the playlist for the unit. There are a number of other videos, just as a little a warning, I guess. I've uploaded lots of content for different units, so don't go roaming around necessarily, because you may be watching stuff that doesn't apply to you yet. So stick to the playlist for this unit, and that will keep things nice and tight for you in terms of the content delivery and what's expected in this particular package of learning content. So there will be then not necessarily a video for each topic, but for the ones that I feel I can explain and elaborate and add my own personal touches to things. Please engage with the YouTube videos. They tend to be quite popular and students enjoy them. Also, please submit questions for things you would like me to talk about, even if I might talk about in a 5-minute or a 10-minute video. I say this every time and very, very few students do it, but please, if you have a burning question you would like me to speak to, do that. Email me or post it on the Facebook group, and I can record a quick 5-minute video and upload that. That's very easy. And for me, it makes things a little bit more personal than just typing it out. But if it's a straightforward question, say particularly something to do with referencing or assessments, Facebook is, and on that, going to the next thing already, the Facebook group is a fantastic way to collaborate, not just with me as your educator, but also with your peers. They've proved very, very popular. Whatever you think of Facebook as a, kind of corporation, the forum and the format and the ease of use of the Facebook groups have done very well in the past. So please engage. If you don't wish to use your private Facebook account, fair enough. Just sign up for a new one, just like I've done. I'm Saul Konofsky Work, and it's separate from my private account. So you could do that as well. Your name, student, put in your student email as the sign up, and keep it separate. Because as teachers, we do need to be aware of what we post on social media because students can easily find us. So you may want to start that process now and creating your own kind of work/teacher account. So YouTube, Facebook, the Blackboard site. Then there's Collaborate Ultra, which is the real-time sessions where we can engage in an online classroom. I tend to have fewer Collaborate Ultra sessions because of the content I'm uploading on YouTube, the Facebook group, etc. I tend to punctuate them around assessment time. So I'll have a couple of sessions in the lead up to assessment 1 and a couple of sessions in the lead up to assessment 2. I'll be posting on the Facebook group some possible times, and I tend to kind of work with democracy. People who can make, most people can make a particular time is when I schedule it, and they'll be recorded. So that's the way that you engage in the learning activities. So in terms of the resource, as I said, McDonald text is a great text. You can get a physical copy. Versions wise, if you get an older or an updated one, it doesn't really bother me too much. You might just need to do some more flicking around. And some of my videos and things might refer to the older McDonald text. You might have a newer one. So just flick around. The page is always almost very similar. There might be 1 to 5 pages different. So just flick around and see what I'm talking about, and it'll make sense. There are a number of other resources that are listed in the unit outline. These are just lots of different texts that refer to classroom management. Look, you don't need to refer to all of them to do well in the assessment, not by a long shot, but what they do is start to point towards, these scholarly references, rather than going, oh, I'm going to Google something here and find a random blog or a website or an old, something that isn't relevant. Some of the stuff here may be old. For example, Bennett Smilanich is a text from 1994, but how relevant is this stuff? It's still so relevant, particularly the Bennett Smilanich stuff. I've done a lot of training in their work, and they're Australian. They really know our context and what works. So, they're your signposts to starting your research part of understanding classroom management philosophies. So, assessments. I will do in-depth, as I mentioned at the beginning, in-depth descriptions of the assessments in more detail, talking to the rubric in particular, because the rubric is so important in understanding how to do well. But just a cursory glance now, there are 2 assessments weighting at 50% each, one in week 6 and one in week 10. Your focus must be, number 1, on the first assignment. Obviously it's due first, so start thinking about bringing this together really from the very first week. Is the positive learning framework plan. There's a lot of detail in the unit outline on this, in terms of what you need to do to bring this together. Most broadly, this is the foundation stone. Think about like building a house. This is the concrete foundation on which you will build all of your practices as a good, competent, positive classroom manager. So, I'm encouraging you, if you haven't yet, this assessment essentially forces you to think really deeply about what you believe in terms of your personal experiences, who you are, and where that comes from, and how that's going to be directed towards a particular philosophy of classroom management. Because although we're sort of broadly saying, well, here is we're working within a positive framework here. We're not thinking about something that is quite authoritarian, discipline-wise, punishments. That is old school. It doesn't work anymore, despite what some people say. When I was a kid, I was punished all the time, and it didn't make any difference to me. But this is just not what generally works in schools, and you need to be thinking about how can you best equip yourself with the skills that you can talk about in an interview when you do go for an interview as a teacher. Talking about this is what's going to get you the job, not saying, oh, I've got a whole raft of really clever punishments that I'm going to get my students to do when they're naughty. That just doesn't fly anymore. So positive learning framework plan gets you to think about how are you going to direct your previous experiences, your beliefs, your attitudes, your values, etc., into a particular philosophy. So that's parts A and B. There's a number of guiding prompts and questions there. And you need to be thinking about, and you will be exposed to, classroom management theory. What speaks to you? You need to consider this and start making notes on the theories that really you identify with immediately. Go with your gut with a lot of these things. Think about what's going to work best for you. And then, as you move forward and you marshal that theory, you've got to think about, well, what does that look like? Okay, how will you implement this? It's all well and good to say, here's my philosophy, and it looks wonderful and so cohesive. But what is this going to look like practically in the classroom with your students on the day? How are you going to, your first day, your first week, your first term, how are you going to build relationships with students? How are you going to set the tone and the what is the rules, the codes of conduct that students will be following? How is your classroom going to be laid out? What are those expectations of learning and behavior? And those two go hand in hand. Then think about, well, okay, I'm going to do all this really good work to make my students trust me, make them feel that this place that they come to for their learning in whatever subject discipline you have, well, what is this place? What is it? What are the parameters? What are the values? What is it guided by? Excellent. Okay, now you've got to know that students are going to misbehave, even the best students. It's one of the foundation stones. If you watch the Classroom Management Foundations video, of which I've used in lots of different units. So again, there's a little note at the bottom of the YouTube video. Just ignore if there's particular topics that don't align. But there's a lot of content in there that's relevant, very relevant to us. But one of the things I say in that video, that foundations video, is even your best students will misbehave if given the chance. So you've got to go in there thinking, okay, here's my prevention management, all the stuff that I'm doing. But then what happens if they misbehave? What am I actually going to do? What are the things, the practical, the behavioral things that I'll be doing? How will I be using my voice, my body, looking with the eyes, using students' names, using choices to guide students into the right kind of space you want them to learn, to get them away from disruptive or non-compliant behavior, etc., etc. So, preventative strategies is one pillar. There's a pillar. Then corrective strategies is the other. It's the two major pillars that's going to kind of hold up, the roof of your house. So, think about bringing all this together. It's going to be detailed. 3,000 words. You've got lots of space in which to explore this. I've given you some suggestions of, you can include a classroom layout map, for example. You can include flow diagrams, all sorts of things. It doesn't need to be all written out like an essay or report style. You might want to put some, pull together some posters that will be on the walls that show the rules, colourful maybe and clear. Put those as an appendix. So, think about innovative ways of showing this plan and bringing it together. So assessment 2, so that's the first thing you need to think about. Assessment 2, once that's in the bag and you've got feedback on that one, you'll start to have to think about assessment 2 because they're reasonably close together, a month apart. And this is an essay style. You get to choose a particular current management challenge. So obviously things like bullying, having diverse students from refugee backgrounds, and gender and LGBTI issues in schools are all kind of challenges that we need to manage. And again, we're not thinking about management as only behavioural. So when I say management, say of refugee students, don't think that I'm saying, well, refugee students automatically badly behave. No, no, no. But they present a particular management, more broadly speaking, issue. How do we include them into our classes in a way that is welcoming, that builds trust and support from the first moments that you meet with them. All sorts of things. And bullying obviously is a major issue that is focused mostly on behavioural, but what are the strategies and things that prevent bullying? There's not necessarily for dealing with the corrective strategy there and then when you see a bully targeting a victim, but what are all the things that happen to prevent bullying? Whole school approaches. So whatever topic you choose, the focus for the essay is around this idea of, okay, what is the research say about this particular issue? So there's lots of guiding websites on the Blackboard site under the assessment section folder for assessment 2. That will start your research out. It's a really good idea as well if you come across something like a policy or a website, an anti-bullying program. What is the research that they rely upon? Go find their research links if they're there, and then look at and see if you can find those journal articles or books and explore those, because that's how they formulate their programs. Try and understand the research behind that. But you've got to bring together, what is the research, and as well, and this is the critiquing element here, what is happening, these schools and agencies and programs, you've got to evaluate them. What does it seem like? Does this marry up? Do these programs marry up well with the research and what works? Do these programs account for, say, if we're looking at bullying, what occurs in social media and cyberbullying? Is that accounted for, and does it do it well, rather than just the face-to-face stuff? And then once you've done that, you've got to bring together this idea of a letter to parents. It's a fictional information night, which schools have lots of information nights about all sorts of things. What is a good way to communicate how the whole school approach to this particular issue, where you've evaluated all the programs and tactics and strategies, and now you're going, okay, well, this I think is a good one, whatever program or whatever strategy or whatever way of designing, inclusion, whatever the case may be. And now let's communicate it to parents. Let's engage with our stakeholders. So it's sort of, you're going right through the process there, from understanding what's out there, evaluating that stuff, and then now bringing it into agency in that school and being able to communicate it with your stakeholders, the parents. So again, very important, and I'll say this again and again, but with anything you submit for your unit and your course, think about making sure you meet the criteria of the assessment, and look at the rubric very carefully, because that tells you exactly what you need to do and the criteria for each level of assessment. Make sure you're using APA 6 referencing as best as you can, and there's a referencing guide. Follow that to the letter. Make sure your academic expression is clear. High standard literacy and presentation there is what's expected for a master's unit. In terms of what else is on the unit outline, there's a lot about past requirements and all of that sort of thing. Please, I'm not going to talk about that in detail. It's all in black and white right in front of you. Understand what you need to do. Say if you require an extension, it needs to, you need to let me know well before the assessment is due, and tell me that you need an extension, for what reason. Fill out the form. It's all there for you. And generally, I'm very lenient. I will grant an extension, for people who need it. Sometimes we do need these extensions on assessments. So again, from here, if you haven't yet jumped to it, go to the topic calendar and see what is coming up. Plan your time out. Again, if you're this is the first time you're doing a unit in the course, time management as a teacher is absolutely essential. It's one of the core skills for success as teachers. You need to be good at time management and organising yourself, organising what is required, and what is high stakes, and what is low stakes, and things that you need to do immediately and get your head around. So, immediately, high stakes, understand the assessments, what's required of you, start to engage with the material, with the activities, with the Facebook group, with the YouTube channel. Start off on the front foot and being really clear and sure of what's expected of you, and have fun while you're doing it. Raise provocative questions. Facebook is a great forum for that. Raise your hand up and say that you disagree, or raise your hand up and say that you're concerned about something, or that you are confused about something, or why we've chosen to include this. Oftentimes I find students, even at master's level, tend to be very compliant and just sort of take in information that I'm giving them. Well, I think to be a good teacher in the 21st century, it's not just about compliance. There's a lot of compliance. Trust me, you'll be, ratcheted down again and again with those compliance issues and, the standards and all of those things. But, I think teaching as well is about reasonable and sometimes quiet resistance, and saying, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel right to me for these reasons. And, you need to be thinking about that, because, as I've said, there is a critiquing element to this unit. There is a research and analytical element to this unit. So it isn't just about that simple transmission from, okay, this is what I read, I take it in, and then I regurgitate it back out. If you do that, you may well pass, but you're certainly not going to get the sort of high standards that I'm sure you're all expecting of yourselves. So engage, collaborate, discuss, question, be provocative. That's what I'm encouraging, because that's the kind of teacher I like to be as well. And as well, if you're struggling, if you need support, put your hand up, okay, or go to the relevant support networks and sources and agencies in the university. I can point you in the right direction, but there's plenty there to take advantage of, both, fully online or face-to-face if you're going to go to the Bentley campus for something. So I'd rather you tell me that you're struggling. And, there is no shame if you find yourself halfway through that it's all too much, to say, look, I've got to withdraw from this unit. It's too much. I'm going to try it another time. And I think that does happen in this course a little bit, because, it is a master's level. It's rigorous. People think that they can, fit it in with their very busy lives. They may be working full-time or full-time carers, or have lots going on, and it just doesn't come together right now. But that doesn't mean that it won't come together in the future. So also be honest with yourself and say, hey, hang on a minute, I just can't handle this right now. Because trust me, when you become a teacher, it's going to be full on all the time. The brake never really, or the accelerator is down the whole time. And then even in the holidays, sometimes you get a moment's breath and you've got more work or marking to do. But anyway, my final point here, we're getting close to 40 minutes. So, I'm sure you're ready to do something else other than listen to me blather on. But my little maxim, my mantra that I always communicate to any pre-service teachers that I work with, no matter in what kind of capacity, is, for me, I think the most important characteristic of pre-service and practicing teachers, those that do well and find success in the work, is really important to consider this idea. To be successful in this education game that we're playing, you need to be in equal parts, 50% equal parts, two parts. Part number one is a realist. You need to be realistic about what this job entails. Don't go into it with rose-tinted glasses. There are some hard, harsh challenges and realities to working with young people as we do in education in this country. There are some broken things about our system of education. For example, I'm a strong advocate that NAPLAN is one of the most damaging aspects of our current education system, amongst a raft of other things. But you have to be highly realistic about yourself and your capacities to make a difference in young people's lives, about the system in which you work in and sometimes really butt your head against, about your colleagues, about testing regimes and standardization regimes, etc., etc. You have to be a realist and you have to understand that and come to terms with it. But the other 50%, okay, which really might actually, the realist is on the outside, but inside, the core of you needs to be an optimist. And that means that you're optimistic about the fact that teaching holds incredible rewards and can change not only the lives of the young people you're working with, but change your life in significant and profound ways. Being an educator, for me, has allowed me to overcome some of the most difficult challenges in my life. Absolutely, that drive to learn and to communicate your learning and your understanding of the world and the relationships you build with people last a lifetime, whether it be your colleagues, students that you meet. It is an absolutely fantastic, vital, necessary and wonderful thing that you're doing, learning to become an educator. I think education is one of the most pivotal and foundational aspects to a good society, to living in a good and just and functioning society. And it has so many rewards, but sometimes you really have to work very hard for it. But what in life is ever easy? What good stuff comes from easy work? The best stuff in life comes from the hard graft. And if you work hard in this unit and you're focused on doing well, you're going to get a lot out of it that you can pull directly into your professional practices out in schools. So thank you for engaging in this rather long-winded introduction, but that tends to be how I roll. Hope you're keeping well. Now at the start of the unit, you're approaching everything with energy, and we continue to feel that way as we go through. And I'll no doubt be seeing many of you on Facebook group and as well on the Collaborate sessions as we move along. Thank you for engaging.